Well, I'm gonna take a little break for questions in here in just a moment. But before we break to the questions, I just want to show you a couple of things. One of which is a basic understanding of the prefixes and suffixes. Now, again, as I've said before, I'm not trying to show you a grammatically correct and thorough Hebrew lesson. There's other people that do that. What I'm trying to show you is by use, which is to say, by reading the Tanakh, by looking through the dictionary, by reading how other people have translated things, I've noticed things. And I've noticed systems which work in the language. And then what little I've heard from other people here and there, it seems to be kind of sort of equivalent. So I'm not trying to show you the ultimate Hebrew class. You know, Bonnie at the conference last week, and there's Sarah Krebs who teaches Hebrew, and there's, she was saying that it was, some Hebrew thing online. Does anybody remember what that was? Do you remember what she said? There's a Hebrew, I don't know. There's a Hebrew thing online. Bonnie was talking about it, and she says, everybody goes to this thing to learn Hebrew. Go look there. There's things to learn if you want to know the proper way to speak, the proper way to write, the way the grammar structure works. So what I'm going to show you here is things that I've noticed that are typical. So if you're reading through the Tanakh, and again, there was a fellow, you just got a Stone's Tanakh. Where did you get that from? That you just showed me, the black...
At the Bible bookstore in the mall in Salem.
Okay, he got one at the Bible bookstore in the mall in Salem.
Borders carries them also.
Excuse me?
Borders
Carries them. Everything Jewish up in Portland by the Multnomah area, Middleman Jewish Center, they carry the book. They cost about $60. I have what they call the collegiate edition of the smaller one, but it's a little bit hard to read. And then he got a bigger one. It was about $60-something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I suggested that maybe Jamie try to get some and have them available for people so you don't have to go chase them down. But we just were talking about that last week and we haven't done that yet. It's about a $60 book. The point is, I happen to like the format, which is to say it's a publication choice. It's the publishers that chose in the Stone's Tanakh here to write this format of the Hebrew letters with this typescript, the English on this side, and the difficult thing, but you have to get used to it, is that you have to know again the letters, P to numbers. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, Yod is 10, but the Kaf, which is the 11th letter, actually is the number 20. So if you are reading here, this is the way the Stone's Tanakh works. If you're reading here, for some reason, I don't know why they did this, but when you get to 15 and 16, they don't write it as, well, so for example, 14 is a Yod Dalet, that's a 10 plus 4, so 10 plus 4 is 14. And the 15, though, they go to, Tet is 9, I'm trying to find it, they do Tet plus Vav, which is 9 plus 6, which is 15. And then 17 is Yod Zion, I believe, or Tet Zion. Yeah. Tet Vav and Tet Zion is 15 and 16. And then for 17, they jump back to Yod Zion. I don't know why they do that, but that's how they do that. If you don't, it's like, why don't they just write, 10 plus 1 is 11, 10 plus 2 is 12, 10 plus 3 is 13, 14, 15, but 15 and 16 are 9 plus 6 and 9 plus 7. I don't know. But that's what they do. And then when they get to 20, it's the Kaf. Then 21 would be Kaf Aleph, 22 is Kaf Bet. So again, you have to know these things if you're going to read it. The JCS Tanakh is a whole different format, and I just happen to like this one better. But the other thing you got to realize, it's not our normal English way of writing, but you'll see a colon, 2 dots. And the end of the colon is where they start the next sentence. So here it says Yod Gimel, that's 13, and you have to read across the line and you see 2 dots, and the 2 dots means that's the end of the 12th verse, and the Yod Gimel is the 13th, so after the colon, after the 2 dots, that's what starts the 13th verse. And if the two dots are at the end of the line, then the next one will start down here, and it's like, but you have to kind of figure out how their publication style was. So what I'm saying is that it takes a certain effort. These things takes a certain effort. This is what I noticed. These are the letters in blue, here I wrote, that act as prefixes. So if you write a word, for example, Abba, that's Aleph Bet. It's spelled Aleph Bet, that's Ab. But the letter Aleph may be a prefix. So for example, if you look up a word in the dictionary, you don't know then whether the word you're reading is spelled in the Hebrew and it's not, happens to start with a prefix or happens to start with a word that starts with an A, an Aleph, like Abba. So what I found though is that typically if there's a word that's translated saying I will do something, it starts with the letter Aleph. So Aleph as a prefix means I will. For example then, if you say his name is Aleph Hey Yod Hey, it's translated I am that I am. That doesn't say I will, but it's also translated in the Stones compared to the King James, I will be whatever I will be. But see, the other way to render that, and we went over this a couple weeks ago, if you have the word Aleph Hey Yod Hey, and you could say that's pronounced Ayah or Ayah. Somebody might say, if you call that Ayah, you're an idiot. Again, the phonetics, without the vowel points, but again, I'm trying to look at the meanings of the letters, so I'm not so worried about the vowel pronunciation. Well, I'm probably butchering the language, but I'm trying to look at what it's saying. So I know people could criticize the way I'm pronouncing it, but again, that's where you come in with the vowel dots. And again, in the Paleo, there were no vowel dots. So I've even heard scholars of Hebrew say and admit we really don't know how the ancient language was pronounced. All we know is the modern conformity to a vowel points of the Masoretic text. So for someone to criticize how it's being pronounced isn't really even valid. Just to say, there's one thing that makes a big difference. We'll get to it next week. Some people write the word, the eighth letter, C-H-E-T. In modern Hebrew, it's this. It comes up there. The other letter was a hey. Paleo, it's this. There's a certain dictionary I have that I didn't bring, which actually, when it's writing an English word, like if you're going to write Hanukkah, some people say, well, it's Chanukah. And some people say, well, maybe it's Hanukkah. Or maybe it's just Hanukkah with an H. But what they'll do in this other translation of the dictionary is they wrote an X with a line through it. And it's actually pronounced as a guttural Hanukkah. So what I do on my chart is to force the brain to say, this is not English, it's not the nice fluid Latin Romance language, it's why? But looking at this was an interesting rendering, so I write it as a CX. A C with a lower X, not... So when somebody writes this, they say Chet, because we think English. We have to get our brains out of English if we're going to understand the Hebrew. So now we have this yeah. So all the other letters are like these things. It's like, why the ras? And then you say, oh, well, that's just those crazy Jews. It's like, no, this was Yahweh giving it to his people. And if he is the one who invented this language and put these letters here, then we can't blame them crazy Jews or those guys over there that just don't have the romantic fluid. It's like, no, this was Yahweh's design. Why would he do such a thing? Let's look at the meaning of the letters. Remember we said there's two voices. And if you look at the chart, there's one section through the middle where it says meta. Well, meta means a change. And if you say, well, there's this change between the letters, also it's kind of like the inferred blank space between the letters. To change from this letter to that letter, and then from this letter to that letter, something happened. What was the process of evolving or morphing into this next letter? What happened to go from here to there? That's kind of the voice of the blank space between the letters. And all of a sudden you have a Zion, a weapon, which is chopping something off, and then you've got a fence. And if there was ever a place to have if you listen to a nice symphonic music, and all of a sudden the needle in your phonograph, it's a scratch, and it's just like so jarring. I think Yahweh was intentionally saying, stop! Think about it. This is the week of the Selah. We're right in between the Zion and the Het. It's that rasp. It's the weapon. It's like that. Like the bright red. Stop! What is going on here? Now, we had talked about there being something different about the next 12 letters inside the Het. We had talked about the first 7 letters being a message to regard. The first 7 letters, we'll talk about this next week, but it's like studying science of what is, and then there's a disconnect. And the next 12 letters inside the Het are inside the kingdom, inside the treasure box, inside the Mishkan, where you don't bring the profane, you don't bring those in contact with the dead, you don't bring, to use an English phrase, the unholy. It's set apart. And Yahweh, even in the phonetic of the language, made that distinct with a zzz, sounds like almost something scary, and that's between the Zion and the Het. So for us to say, we're looking at the message in the letters, in the shape of the letters, in the meanings of the letters, in the sound of the letters. Yahweh's personal message is in the letters. And so whenever, like somebody made a tape of some Jewish person, a Hebrew speaker, singing the Psalms. And when you hear that, chet, it's this jarring thing. If you go out of it, I'll just say chet. Or I'll say Chanukah. Or forget that, let's call it Hanukkah. It rolls off but it's Hanukkah. So what I'm saying is that if we butcher the rest of the language, we should note that Yahweh put that there for a reason. At least I'm assigning it to him. Now if somebody could say, oh no, it was Rabbi so-and-so back in 423 BC who put that there, then I would stand corrected. But otherwise I have to look at trying to see what is, and then trying to surmise by other things that I read within the scriptures, why could it maybe be that way? So I'm contemplating, I'm beaming. And remember I talked about the word beam, meaning to think, to ponder, to meditate, to consider. I'll show you a little bit of English-Hebrew blend. What's that round cap that they put on the head with the propeller that you spin to think? Isn't that a beaming? When you have the letter Yod at the end, this is the suffixes, this is the prefixes. When you put the letter Yod at the end of the word, being, with a Yod, being, that means my doing it. So the word being is think, ponder, consider, meditate, look well to, and go, that's being. Let's put our thinking caps on now. Isn't that what they used to say in the romper room, on TV show? Your thinking cap with the propeller spinning is being. That's it. That's Hebrew, but it's English. I mean, there's all these words that once you start making the connections, you go, you probably know a lot more Hebrew than you think. Does anybody here know how to do the hokey pokey? Anybody? There's a few people who know how to do the hokey pokey. Okay. On the bottom of this one chart that I have out there, I don't know if anybody got it. I try to throw these little subtle, humorous joke type of things in there. The very bottom line, it says Hulk and Polk, and then it says Habab, and I have the definitions written down. But Hulk-E means laughing and jesting, reeling and tottering, and Hulk has to do with putting forth the publishing and edition, like putting something in and shaking it all about. He's reeling and tottering, and that's the hokey pokey. That's Hebrew. And Hababi means literally my most dearly beloved, which is to say, hey baby, it's like you're my baby, you're Hababi. That's that is a gateway of entrance, and ket is a fence, but bet means in. So the one who's in the fence, but also in, and that's in like the deepest. That is also like the bosom, or ket that is that you cherish deep in your heart. That's ket bet, which is Hababi. Hababi would be my most dearly beloved Hababi. Anyway, but my point is, when you start playing with these things, you probably know a lot of Hebrew and you don't even know it. So anyway, let's go back to these suffixes. Aleph basically means I will. bet, and if you look at the chart out there, a lot of these things are rendered as a simple form. It means in, or with, or among, or through, or on, but it also means against. So, and how do I know that? It's by use. You start reading the Tanakh, and you see against his house, or against his, and you say, well, that's bet, and then the next word. And so you realize the bet works as a prefix, and it can mean against as well as with. Because remember, a lot of times the words mean one thing and the opposite. And remember when we talked about the aleph and the bet, that the aleph was one, where everything was all one, but then when the aleph, you might say, opened itself up to bet, to make two, to make the other, and let that other go free, it risked having an adversary if that other decided to reject the one. So that's why some people say that bet, number two, at least in the Greek thought, which I have at the top of the chart, represents an adversary or opposition or the satanic concept. Yahweh giving his Malachim, his angels, the right to choose to rebel. And then one of them did, and took a bunch of others with him. He gave the bet room, and the bet took off running. Now he's opposing it against. That's the concept. That's where they get it. Because there's an other. And if Yahweh says, no, I'm going to keep them all just, they have to do what I say, that's robot. That's not free will. So you see these pictures, these theories, these doctrines embedded in the letters and what the letters mean. So bet can mean against, but it's also with, among, through, in, on. And again, as you start reading, if you're reading the English here, like in the English side, and you read the word in with, among, through, against, and you look over to the Hebrew side, you'll see that that's the letter bet. But if you go to look at that word in the dictionary, you may not find it, because if you try to spell it with the word bet as a prefix, it's not there, because it's a prefix, and the dictionary only has the root words. So if you go to start using this dictionary and say it's very confusing, that's why. So by showing you this list of prefixes, as you start to use the dictionary, what you have to do is take the optional approach of dropping off the prefix. So what I've tried to do, what I found, is if you have, say, a 5-letter word, if you start at the right-hand side, which is where the word starts spelling in Hebrew, and you start with this prefix, you start looking and you might not be able to find it, because it's a prefix and it may not be there. But if you start on the left-hand side, the last letters, you're always going to find those, because here, these being the suffixes, you might find like yod mem and vav tav, those are both plurals. One's masculine ending and the other one's feminine ending. It doesn't mean it has to do with male and female, but just is grammatically masculine and feminine. But the word yod mem also means water, or like the Western Sea, which is where the water was. If you're in Jerusalem, that's the Mediterranean Sea. So the word mayim, men yod mem, is waters, but yod mem can just mean water. So then you start looking at it. So if you have a word spelled with 5 or 6 letters, you look at that and say, okay, what I try to do is start diagnosing or dissecting or breaking down the words, which I've been told you can't do, but I do it and it works, and so that's what this is about. You take the last 2 letters and you look it up in the dictionary. And then you take the last 3 letters and you look that word up in the dictionary. And then you look up those 2. You drop 1 letter off and you look at those 2 letters. And what you could do is look up every single word that starts with those 2 letters. I can show you that in a few minutes, but I'm just trying to give you this concept. If you look up the word, which is spelled, for example, yod-hey. Here, let's do it with aleph hey yod-hey. I'll show you what I mean. If you look at aleph hey yod-hey, we could look that up, but I'm going to start with yod-hey. Again, you have to know the sequence. So I know I opened up the tet. Yod comes after tet. Here's a tet. Yod comes after tet. Oh, there's a yod. So now I'm going to go back. And again, when I first started doing this, I didn't have a clue how the letters went. I didn't know the alphabet when I got this dictionary. Man, it was a struggle. So I'm just trying to show you the easy way to go. Here's yod-hey. And you back it up. It says, shortened form of the tetragrammaton. Well, the word tetragrammaton is Greek. Tetra means 4. Gramma is where we get the word grammar, which is a letter or a picture or some kind of a writing or a scratching. So tetragrammaton is technically 4 letters, which is simply the 4-letter name. Well, this has 4 letters, but Yahweh said in Exodus 3, Yod-Hey Vav-Hey is Shem Zakar, which is memorial name, so that's Yod-Hey Vav-Hey. So this is what's referred to as the tetragrammaton. Even though they're blending English, Hebrew, and Greek here, that's what they mean. This is page 255, right in the middle. It also means woe. It says of imitative origin. What that means is that when you hit yourself in the hammer, you go, yeah! Well, that's Yod Hey, yeah! That's just what comes out of your mouth. So some of these words are imitative origin. Then you go down to here and you'll see a box with a Yod Hey. So in this dictionary, you'll see the way the publisher has done it. You'll see a box, and then a Yod, and then a Hey. Well, the box means any number of other letters could be there. So Yod Hey acts as a suffix in this case. And so what this means, it says suff. That means it's a suffix. It means Yod Hey might end up at the end of the word. Used in NH. Well, what is NH? Well, you go back to the beginning, there's a bunch of abbreviations. It happens to mean New Hebrew, I believe, is what it's talking about. Use in New Hebrew to form nouns from other nouns, meaning a place for or the occupation of, as in Bet Nun Gimel Resh Yod Hey means carpentry, from Nun Gimel Resh is carpenter. So, for example, and again, this is really hard to see. That's modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew plays with one reason I printed it in the Paleo is it's easier and it plays with a different part of your brain. But if a Nun Gimel Resh, I think that's what it says. Nun Gimel Resh means carpenter, nagar. And if you add a Yod Hey, it means carpentry. That's a noun. It's kind of a noun. It's a noun formed from another noun. But anyway, so a lot of this dictionary, you say, I don't care about that stuff. But it's there if you're interested. But Yod Hey basically then says, well, what does it mean? If it's of imitative origin, that's not the meaning. If it's a shortened form of the Tetragrammaton, Yah, well, that doesn't tell you what it means. That just tells you who it's referring to. And if it's talking about the occupation of something that forms a noun, that doesn't do anything for me. Okay, if that doesn't do anything for me, then what good does it do me to look it up? Well, let's look at Hey, Yod, Hey. It just takes time. Hundreds and hundreds of hours. 148. You come down here and you got a Hey Yod Gimel, a Hey Yod Dalet, Hey Yod Hey, to exist, happen, or become. And then it says a parallel form of Hey Vav Hey. Parallel form of Hey Vav Hey, go look it up. Here it says Hey Yod. Look at that. Hey Yod means here it is, or here is. Well, Hey Yod is a two-letter form, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to say these two letters means here is. And then I'm going to look at Hey Vav Hey, because Hey Yod Hey is pretty close to Hey Vav Hey. So Hey Vav Hey, again, you have to recognize the letters. So the more you use this, the more you'll recognize the letters. You go to page 142. Hey Vav Aleph means here it. The Hey Vav Hey right in the middle of the page, it means to fall. He fell. That's Hey Vav Hey, like the snow falls. But Hey Vav Hey also means to be. Well, that goes back to the word to exist. Cause to exist. But it also means destruction or ruin. Vav Hey. Hey Vav Hey. Well, wait a minute, this is Hey Vav Hey. So this means to exist, or to be, or to fall, like the snow. But also, you see here, it means destruction or ruin. I know you can't read this, but I'm just putting it there for the sake of... Anyway, it also means actual or current or present tense. Present. And then you look at Hey Vav Yod. Hoo-wee. Oh, yeah, Hu Va, excuse me. I'm just playing. You have to sit here and play with these words because it has a dot above, and that's ho, that means it's ho, and then a line underneath that's ho va. It means present or actual. Hey Vav Vav Yod is happening or occurrence. It's like I'm not looking at Hey Vav Vav Yod. I'm looking at Hey Yod Hey or Hey Vav Hey. But here's the point. As I've said before, I found that the more you look at these things, you'll start to recognize the patterns, and that the Vavs and Yods kind of act like wild cards. You can put them in, and they'll kind of change it, they'll kind of strengthen it, they'll give a different aspect to the verb, or you can take them out, and it really hasn't changed it so much. But if you stick a hey or an aleph, it might change it, but it might not. It might just be the expression of something. So again, that's by use. That's by looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words, you start to see how the dictionary works. Just for what it's worth, there's another etymological dictionary that I've made reference to in the past. This is by a guy named Rabbi Raphael Hirsch. It's based on his commentaries. Well, he didn't write this. This guy, Matthew Clark, took his writings and deduced what he did with the language. And he wrote it up. What this has, Peter and Linda there have this thing called a parsing book, where they take every verb and slice it up into all these different tenses, which is called parsing. It's like, man, that's an overwhelming amount of technical, grammatically correct, precision, modern Hebrew, you might say, which is like over my head. But for what I'm doing, this book takes every verb that Rabbi Hirsch looked at and tells you what he found in it. And what he says, I've mentioned this before, Hebrew is self-contained. You don't have to look at any other book or any other language to determine what Hebrew means. It's self-referential because Yahweh is revealing himself in his own language. Whereas if you look in this dictionary, and again, just to show you how a few things work, this is an etymological dictionary showing you where the words came from. So you'll see places in here where it says the Italian poet Lodovico Ariosto in 1474 derived this word from a Latin word. And it's like, do you need to know that information? It just shows you that it wasn't an ancient Hebrew word, it's a modern word. And he shows other things where the word hapax legomenon means that it's a one-time use of the scriptures. It says here that this other one, it probably occurs Job 37:6 in the imperative in a different form. And so what I'm saying is that this book here, it says QAL, it says PU, it says HITH. These are different forms of the verbs. You can look at all those things if you want to study the language. But what I do is not even worry about that. I'm just looking for the definitions. Destruction, ruin, actual occurrence. The yod as a prefix, what I found basically means, remember this one meant I will. This one, the yod, means he will. Well, if Yahweh says this is his name, why did he start Yod-Heh Vav-Heh with he will instead of I will? But the word Aleph Hey Yod-Heh is I will. But if Hey Yod means here is, if we go back to the Hey Yod Hey, it means to exist, happen, or become. He became. I will become. I will become what? Well, it's translated, I will be what I will be. I will do what I will do. I am what I am. But where do they get that out of Aleph Hey Yod Heh? They get it out of the letters. So if you want to know how these translators come up with this stuff, they go back to these letters. So for everybody to say, well, you can't break it down by the letters, it's like, I'm sorry, I've seen proof. Because you can't, you look up in Strong's, you look up in, I got a Brown Driver Briggs there as a comparison, just for what it's worth. You have to know Hebrew. But you can look at Strong's Concordance, you look at the English word, it tells you the Hebrew word. You can look at the Hebrew here, and Brown Driver Briggs will tell you every single place where it's used in the scriptures. And then you can look it up, and then you can look at in the Stones, we looked at this word for iniquity earlier, probably shouldn't address that right now, but the point is, if you said, when Yeshua said, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, what's the word iniquity? You look up in Strong's, iniquity. It says it's spelled Aleph Vav Nun. You look up Aleph Vav Nun in here, and it says acquiring or possessing. Misusing means of acquisition. You look at Aleph Vav Nun here, and it says something else about iniquity or sorrow or grief. And you look at Aleph Vav Nun here, and you go, what's he really saying? Well, we were told it comes from the Greek word anomio, which is torlessness, which is lawlessness. You can depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. But here, if it means, according to Rabbi Hirsch, it means misusing means of acquisition. And it also has to do with wealth. And so it's like, it doesn't just mean torlessness. As you were saying, it means basically misusing or misappropriating what Yahweh has given us. Did you come up with one other thought about that?
Well, I was just studying what wouldn't stand before God in Psalms chapter 6, and I think Proverbs 31, There's a whole bunch of references. I just wear that scratching on it.
Okay, the point is this. He found one word and he wanted to know what it meant. So you could look at Aleph, Vav, Nun. And you could sit there and say, well, how is the Aleph here used? And a Vav, Nun, you could say, well, if a Vav is a man or a bridge, and Nun is life or something imparted, and Aleph means to I will, you could say, well, I will impart. I will bridge to make something happen. And you could say, it has to do with acquiring wealth, and it says that to misuse that which you've been given, contrary to the Torah, if you do that, and Yeshua says, I have no recognition of you, that's pretty serious business. That's now you have to start thinking about it and say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, that's wickedness. That's like, well, I'm not doing that. It's like, but what does it really say? And if you go back to these words to find out what it really says, the purpose of this is to say, there's a bunch more stuff in here. So Yod-Heh Vav-Heh can mean he will cause to exist. But it also means he will ruin and destroy. The word Yahweh means he will ruin and destroy. It also means he will cause to exist. Well, El Shaddai is both the provider, that's Shad, is the woman's breast, that which provides nourishment, and Yod at the end, Shaddai, means this is my providing nourishment. But Sheen as a prefix means who, that which, Dalet Yod means stop or enough. So it's even El Shaddai, which is translated the Almighty, is the one who provides nourishment, but he's also the one who says, that's it, that's enough, calling it an end. That's like Aleph Tav. Aleph, I'm the one who's going to set this whole thing in motion and begin the whole thing and provide everything it takes to keep it going. And I'm also the one who says, that's it. So in the book of Revelation, you'll see if you read real close that the vision that John saw of this one in the sky with a sword coming out of his mouth, like the image of the emblem that was made of the Shem Zakar, he said, I'm the Aleph Tav, but he also claims to be El Shaddai. But he also claims to be the one that was slain and yet lives, and lives forever, the one that was and is to come. He claims to be all those. So here this one that John saw is in a position to claim to be the one who started, the one who ended, the one who is El Shaddai, the one who is Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, and the one who was the Vav man slain and yet Zadi sprouted back to life, resurrected, ascended, Kuf, and yet Kuf is also coming back as Resh, the noble man, shining glorious, Sheen Ar Elyon, exalted in the sky, as the Aleph Tav, accomplished and completed as he said. That's the guy in the book of Revelation. That's who we're looking at. Sounds like Christianity? It's ancient Hebrew. It's in the letters. So here are these letters. Hey means the as a prefix. Vav means and, or it's this connecting thing. But if you read here in the book, Vav also can turn past into the future, or the future into the past. So it's a bridge, it's a link, but it's also this connecting thing. And again, you have to look at it can mean but. So you're saying something but, and then you go back to this other thing. It's just, Vav acts as this jumping around. Yod means he will. Kaf means like, or as, the letter Kaf. Lamed as a prefix means unto or regarding, on account of, or it can mean by, like one of the Psalms says, Lamed, Dalet, Vav, Dalet. You could say, well, this is to David, or is it by David? The letter Lamed as a prefix can mean both. And all this information is in the dictionary. If you look up each letter, it'll tell you if it has the letter with a box behind it. Lamed with a box, it means Lamed acts as a prefix, and this is what it does. If it's got a box and then a mem, for example, it'll tell you, well, basically that's a pluralization. Yod mem. In fact, all these letters here, jumping into the suffixes here real quick, Hey mem, Kaf mem, Lamed mem, and Tav mem, what I found is can always be translated as them, or theirs, or as in Kaf mem. Kaf as a suffix basically means you or your, whereas Yod as a suffix means my, me and you. Yod meaning my stuff. Like Yod means I'm the artist. Yod is the hand that works. So I'm the artist, and when I'm finished with my work, I sign it. So Yod in the beginning says I will, or he will, he will make something. And then Yod at the end means my, as if, okay, the artist, or the singer, they made it and they claimed it as their own. Whereas then the Kaf at the end, you go back, Kaf at the beginning means like, or as, and kaf at the end means you or yours. So kaf mem is actually plural of you or yours. This means you, y'all, you plural. Vav nun is basically one who does something, like a carpenter does carpentry, this word we were looking at down here, but or builder, that's Vav nun. So that's the man who is engaged in the action of doing. It basically turns something into a noun. But nun vav, like Elohenu, is ours. So you see all these suffixes pretty much act as like who's doing what. So if you start with the back end, and translating from the left to the right, you'll find out what it's concerning or who it's concerning. And then the other thing I've noticed is that there's tav that can be used as a prefix and a suffix. So for example, and I got to say this as a correction, on the chart, the right-hand side in the middle, it says the Mishkan pattern, on the right-hand side in the gray. I made a mistake. I spelled it tav. Well, here it's supposed to be bet nun yod tav. And the word in the middle is beni, which is my son or my children, ta benit. On the chart, I misplaced these, and it's tav ben nun tav yod, as in if it says my ben benat. It hardly makes a difference, but it's a real serious difference, because every time in the scripture you look at the word for pattern, it's two tavs with beni in the middle. Well, if the tav is a sign of the covenant, then you can say the pattern of the Mishkan is my son, Beni, wrapped up in the covenant. That's the pattern of the Mishkan. Well, that's what all this is about. The Mishkan pattern, which establishes the meaning of the alphabet, is a picture of the Son, or the image of the Creator, wrapped up in the covenant, which is a picture of Yeshua, the one who He sent to us. And again, it's a picture that's in the words. So, lamed means unto or toward or referring to or regarding or written by. Mem as a prefix is the place where one is birthed from. You might say the relationship between mem and nun is like the egg and the chicken that jumps out of the egg. Or it's like the ball of water, mem is water, and the fish that jumps, nun, out of the water. The birthing place and the place that you leave once you're born. So mem can mean a few things. Mem as a prefix can mean the place that you were from, and now you've moved away from it. Or it can mean simply the place of what the word is happening. So what I found interesting is that sometimes in these translations, you'll see a word that means, well, this is what it's about. This is the place. Makom, the word comb means standing. It's like a comb, like a rooster's comb on its head stands up. Or you use a comb and has teeth that stand up. The word comb in Hebrew is something standing. Makom is the place that it stands. But it also might mean it's away from standing. Again, that's the opposite. So each letter, each word can also mean one thing or the other. It's like, how do you know which it is? It could possibly mean both. The point is, you've got to read the whole thing and maybe translate these words and these sentences as if both things are possible. The blessing and the curse, the two voices, there's this dualism, but we've only been given one. And I've read some verses, you read it in Stone's Tanakh, you read it in KJV or ISR, it's like, it looks like a completely different thing. How do you know what to believe? You go back to the mechanism of looking at these letters. And then you make your own decision. Or talk about it amongst yourselves, amongst your friends, and say, what do you think? What does it look like here? Well, I'm just trying to show you something so that we can all come to a common language so that we can then discuss what it is. I'm not trying to give you the answers. Again, I'm trying to provoke and give you tools by which you can then go searching in the scriptures for what these things mean. Nun, as a prefix, then, means like to engage in the action. How do I know that? You read, and as you're reading the scriptures, and a lot of times he says, so I'm going to do this. Well, that's the way it's translated, but it says he's going to engage in this action, and instead of starting with the letter Aleph, it'll start with the letter Nun. What that tells me is that sometimes you can have an Aleph or a Nun in the beginning that says, I'm now going to initiate this action. Sheen, as a prefix, again, look in the dictionary, it means who, that, which, as in Shaddai. The Sheen that will Dalet Yod. So you can read Shaddai as the Sheen, like this here. Sheen Dalet Yod can be read two ways. And so when I say I know that it's possible to break these letters down, is because this is how they do it. This is how it works. the sheen dalet, the shad of my shad. I'm the guy that provides. El Shaddai, the great one that provides. But then if you look at the sheen who dalet yods, who that which says, enough, stop, I'm calling it quits. Aleph Tav, right there in the middle of El Shaddai. See the connection? Okay, Tav then. What I'm saying is that if you see a Tav at the beginning or the end, I've seen it translated two ways. Sometimes the Tav in the beginning means past tense, sometimes it means future tense. But I've also seen the Tav at the end of the word. Sometimes it's translated past tense, sometimes it's translated future tense. Even the experts have no idea what it means. That's the point. They're taking a guess. They're going on historical reference. So what I'm saying is that you can look at the letter Tav saying, it means the sign of the covenant. It's also the last letter, which means this is the conclusion of the matter. Or this is what's going to happen, or this is what did happen. Take your pick. Nobody can tell you you're wrong, but look at it and think, because they don't even know. We have been given these words, and they're passed down through all these centuries to us. And suddenly, there seems to be a mechanism available. Suddenly, I believe this goes back to the things Daniel hid, hide the words of the book, till the time of Kuf Zadi, the time of the end. It's translated then, but what is Kuf Zadi? Another tangent, but the point about that is, if Pei Zadi, according to the dictionary, means a mouth that's opened, Ayin Zadi might mean an eye that's open, Kuf Zadi might mean a shackle that's open, because the letter Kuf is kind of written like a shackle. And then if you look at, go back, this is a bit of a thing for your study, a struggle. Look at every word that starts with the letter Kuf. Then look at every word that has a Kuf in it. And you'll see that it has something to do with an ornament that's around the neck, or a clasping of a shackle, or something like a neck and a head, or a hangman's noose, or these pictures, or pouring something out. So on the chart I've referenced all these different things that a kuf might mean, and they're all based on the same picture. Something that's standing up like a mushroom shape. Kum, Kom, Kumiori, rise and shine. There are these pictures that the letters embed, and there's not just one. It's like this swarm, this cloud of pictures of a reference. So when you go to using the translation, don't think individual, sequential, chronological, locking it in. It's these pictures, these concepts that Yahweh is painting. So this language is huge where you can go with it, multidimensional. Okay, those are the prefixes. As the suffixes, you've got hey at the end, which is the feminine form, which is something revealed or opened up, made evident, disclosed. Vav at the end, which can mean his or it, which is the masculine form. You got yod at the end, which means my. You've got the kaf at the end, which means yours. Then you've got the mem at the end and all these forms of it, which means theirs or thems or y'alls. You got vav nun and nun vav, which is the one who does or ours. And then you've got the tav at the end, which means something being accomplished or something that's about to will be done in the future. Those are prefixes and suffixes. So, is there any questions? Comments? Insights?
Is there some place that the prefixes and suffixes are listed? That I've got some of them down as you mentioned, but
Wait too fast, I know. In the dictionary. This is the benefit of the dictionary. So I'm just trying to show you a few tricks in here. It's already 9 o'clock, but I want to show you a couple other mechanisms of this. I brought some stuff that we don't have time to get into. But if you look at each letter, so again, open up, even if you don't read Hebrew. Here's another word. Inkstand. Kuf, Samik, Tav. Why is it spelled that way? Look before it, look after it. Look at other words that start with Kuf, Samik. Look at every single word that starts with a Kuf, Samik. Kuf, Samik by itself. Kuf, Samik, Aleph. Kuf, Samik, Bet. Kuf, Samik, Gimel. Kuf, Samik, Dalet. Kuf, Samik, Hey. Kuf, Samik, so forth and so on. I've done that with many words, not every word, but I do that all the time. I try to look at, if you take these root two letters, what happens when you add a letter to it, or take a letter away and stick this other letter? If you notice what effect another letter has on that basic word, then you'll start to get the feel of what this other letter does. You can take any premise of a word. So for example, the other week, I looked at the word sheen ayin, the word that's used that means help, save, deliver, redeem, deliver, ransom. It's the word for Yeshua, Yahweh's salvation. So you could take any letter, Aleph Shin Ayin, Bet Shin Ayin, Gimel Shin Ayin, Dalet Shin Ayin, Hey Shin Ayin. Look at what all those words do to the root word Shin Ayin, which means save, help, deliver, rescue, salvation. Then you stick a Vav in between, or a Yod in between. And then you stick other suffixes on the end. It takes the time to go through and dig around. You can look in Brown Driver Briggs, you can look in Hirsch's, you can look in Strong's Concordance. And the point is, you'll only get out of it what you put into it. It would take many hours. One guy I was talking to said he spent 3 hours on one verse. And it's like, man, he was moving pretty fast. You could spend 3 hours on one letter, one word, couple words. But what you find is what you put into it. How much time do we have before the next break? I don't know what I want to mention else here.
60
Time?
seconds.
Excuse me?
60 seconds.
Does anybody have any other questions regarding anything of this or even anything else regarding the dictionary? Let me look at Aleph Hey Yod Hey real quick, because I didn't finish that. We looked at the fragments of Hey Yod Hey and Hey Vav Hey and Yod Hey Vav Hey. But I'm going to look at Aleph Hey. You just got to flip these pages. You got 10 minutes here. Okay, page 8. Now, if you go down to Aleph Hey, you'll run to Aleph Dalet Shin, Aleph Hey Bet. There is no word that's simply Aleph Hey. It goes to Aleph Hey Bet, which happens to mean love. So then you say, well, there's no Aleph Hey by itself, and Aleph we know what it is. Let's see if there's an Aleph Hey Yod. There's an Aleph Hey Lamed, so we back up. There's an Aleph Hey Hey. Aleph Hey Vav, here it is. Aleph Hey Yod means where. And he says it occurs 3 times in the Bible, Hosea 13, 10, and 14. And then it says Aleph Hey Yod Hey, the name of God, literally I am. And then it goes on Aleph Hey Yod Lamed, which is an umbrella. And you go, wait a minute. If Aleph Hey Yod means where, why should Aleph Hey Yod Lamed mean an umbrella or a lampshade? Where's the connection there? Try looking at if Aleph is the prefix, then you look up Hey Yod Lamed. So let's do that, because I'm trying to show you how to use this thing, right? So let's just look up Hey Yod Lamed. Page 148. Hey Yod Hey means to exist or happen to become. Hey Yod Vav Lamed Yod means primitive or primordial or hylic, which is a wood or forest material or matter. Has to do with primitiveness or primordiality. Well, you see then he says it's related to Arabian and Greek. And you could say it has something to do with a shade, an umbrella. Well, what do you make a shade or umbrella out of? Stand under a tree. If something's shady, there's a lot of trees in the forest. And so now you're sitting there going, oh, come on, it has to be more scholarly than that. It's like, not necessarily. This stuff's pretty easy, really. Just let your mind go to connect the dots, connecting the dots. One of the first things that any of us probably ever learned as kids was connecting the dots, right? So here we were given drawings. There might have been a 1, and over here a 2, and here's a 3, and here's a 4. There might be a 5, and there's a 6. And so what did they do to teach us how to read and to count and how to draw? You draw a line. There, okay. I just separated those dots. We're doing the same thing. Abraham was told to count or number the stars. No, he wasn't. He was told to sepher the stars. I just separated. I drew lines connecting the dots to find out what you end up with. That's why I think Abraham made constellations. Because sepher, let's look at the word sepher. Samik Hey Resh. Page 455. Now here's a Samik Pei Kuf, so I moved to down. I know it comes after that. I read it down here. Samik Pei Resh. To count, number, to recount, to tell, to narrate. Counted, numbered, told, recounted, numbered. It also means to cut, as in he cut hair. It's the base of the word mem, Samik Pei Resh Yod Mem, which is scissors. Mem, that means the place of severing. Mem, Samik Pei Resh, or the object by which you can sever. So now I know if I stick a mem as a prefix, it has to do with the object or the place where something happens. I'm trying to show you the benefit of reading the dictionary and just reading. You just have to sit here and read this stuff. It's also, it's based on shafra, which is a large knife or the blade of a sword. That's something that cuts. What does cutting have to do with connecting the dots? Had his hair cut, and then it shows you the other forms of the word. Samik Pei Resh, Samik Pei Vav Resh, Hey Samik Pei Resh Vav Tav, Tav Samik Pei Resh Tav, Mem Samik Pei Resh Tav, Mem Samik Pei Resh, Mem Samik Pei Resh Hey. What you realize is he's showing you what the suffixes and prefixes are, and it doesn't change the basic meaning of the word. It also means a letter, a document, or a book. It means, basically comes from an Akkadian shapru, to send or to write a letter, to send something out. A barber, a hairdresser. Enumeration, census, border, frontier. Then you add an A, so you got Samik Pei Resh Aleph. And it's a scribe or a secretary, a safra, scholar or a teacher. Why should you add an aleph to sefer and you end up with a teacher or a scholar or one who's writing stuff? Again, think about it. Go back and do that. So, I'm going to jump to one other thing. Is there any other questions? Okay, so one of the things we have here is a harp in the tree. Dieter, could you read Psalm, I think it's 137? Are you ready for that?
By the rivers of Babel, there we sat down. Yes, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hung our harps upon the willows in the midst of it. For there they that carried us away in exile demanded of us a shear, and they that ruined us and us required that we Gilah, saying, sing to us one of the Shirim in Zion. How shall we shear, Yahweh, a shear in a strange land? If I forget you, O Yerushalayim, let my right hand forget me. If I do not remember you, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Yerushalayim above my highest simcha, remember, O Yahweh, the children of Edom in the day of Yerushalayim, who said, ruin it, even to its foundation. O daughter of Babel, who are to be destroyed in Simcha shall he be that rewards you as you have treated us. And Simcha shall he be that takes and dashes your little ones against the stones.
Dieter, I believe, has a Bible, scriptures, a rendering here, which has included a lot of Hebrew words into the text. Because as you start learning Hebrew, you'll find that some English words just don't cut it. They don't separate. You just can't get the real feeling of it. So his particular text happens to blend in a bunch of Hebrew words. And the first time I looked at that book, it was like, yeah, I can't understand this stuff. What are these Hebrew words? That's not the place to start. That's the place you're going. Where you're starting is finding whatever English translation you can. King James happens to be what Strong's Concordance is keyed to. I memorized King James as a kid. The words are familiar. I know how to look it up in Strong's. Once I look it up in Strong's, I find the Hebrew word. But I found there's some distinctions between the definitions in Strong's and in this red book, and also in Rabbi Hirsch's, and also in Brown Driver Briggs. If you really want to put some effort to this, you get all of them. Here's the point. If you look on page 447, and you look up, remember we said this is the week of Selah. Selah happens to be spelled Samik Lamed Hey. Lamed Hey, if you look up in the dictionary here, it means to her. It happens to be a two-letter word, so the first letter being a lamed acts as a suffix, which means unto, or regarding, or for, or by. And the hey at the end is basically the feminine ending, meaning hers. It's for her. But then Samik Lamed, if you look at what that means, page 447, basically means, it says basket. Then you look at Selah and Aleph. and it means to weigh. You look at Selah and dalet, add a dalet to it. It means to jump or to spring about. It also means praise. Selah Mekay, to toss aside or make light of. Selah, toss it aside, make light of it. Keep reading. Selah means to weigh, to value. It also is the word Selah, as in stop and think about it. Well, I also wrote out, I don't know if we have time, we've only got a minute left or so, the different things from Strong's Concordance. Selah, it says, is a willow twig that you use to make a basket. Samech Lamed is willow branches. Samech Lamed Aleph is to suspend, hang, weigh in a balance, ponder, beam, put your beanie on, ponder, consider, meditate, look well to, look with regard, compare. Basically, the meaning of the letter ayin, which also has to do with scales and Yom Kippur and Judgment Day. Selah and Hey, it says in Strong's, means to hang up, as in contempt. Like, you guys must have one of them Hebrew hang-ups, right? You got to hang up with Paleo Hebrew. Tread down value, suspension of music or praise. They said in Psalms 137, because they had a despise of Yahweh's Torah, they treaded down its value. They selah'd Yahweh's Torah. So he said he's going to send in the Babylonians and drag you away. And they threw their harps up into the willow trees. A suspension in the music. Think about that. And then the Babylonians, they dragged them off into captivity. They said, sing us some of your songs. How can we sing when our city is in ruins and our Elohim has turned his back on us and forsaken us? Well, it wasn't him that turned his back on them. They turned their back on him, which is why the forsaking happened. For us to regard his words is for the beauty of the heart to be back in our hands. There's a whole story. We have Shoshan Harari there in Jerusalem who makes the harps. And the story that was about this guy who came and was starting to make harps in Jerusalem. And some rabbi came and saw it and counted the strings, and he was saying there was a prophecy that the rabbis know that when the 10-string harp is again made in Jerusalem, the sign of the Mashiach was coming. And he went away rejoicing. For us to come back to these words is the restoration of what our forefathers threw away. They threw the harps into the trees because they were pillaged, because they had forsaken the Torah. For us to regard the Torah is to get the harps back, as it were, out of the trees. The treasure back. The letter Dalet was the door. Between the Zion and Aket is the door. It's a place to think and consider. You look at Hey Vav, or Samech Vav Lamed Lamed Hey, a military rampart. Samech Lamed Pei, to rend, subvert, overthrow, pervert. Samech Lamed Kuf, to ascend. There's that rising up like the pillar of fire again. Samech Lamed Tav, to strip off the husk of fine flour. To sit there and study, what is Selah? What is a willow? Why did he tell us to have willow branches at Sukkot? You go to look at the other words for willow and the branches that were used, and all of a sudden you'll find these mysteries embedded behind the words, but they're not in English. They're in Hebrew, and they'll tell you the story. They'll tell you so much more about the story. The Spirit of Yahweh has spoken through me. His word is upon my tongue. The Elohim of Israel said, the Rock of Israel said to me, one who rules over men righteously, one who rules in fear of Elohim, is like the light of morning when the sun rises. A morning without clouds. From the shine, out of the rain, tender grass sprouts from the earth. For isn't my house so with Elohim? For he has granted to me an everlasting covenant, fully ordered, established for all, and guarded securely. Thus, every occasion I have been saved, and all desires fulfilled. Shall he not make it send forth a branch? Or the other translation says, he will not allow other kingdoms to sprout? Look at that for a moment. Same words in Hebrew. Look at these two different renderings. Shall he not make it send forth a branch? He will not allow other kingdoms to sprout. Is it a question? Is it a statement? What about he will send forth a branch, won't allow other kingdoms to sprout? Is he going to make a sprout, not make a sprout? What's going on? The next phrase, but worthless, godless men are as a wind-blown thistle, thorns thrown away. Not touched by hands, a man touches them with iron tools, pruning poles, and burnt with fire in the place where they are cut down. Now, that's David's last words in 2 Samuel.
Where are you, my dear?
I was reading the last thing I wrote in black ink on the 3rd page.
On the third page.
Okay, now, don't bother reading that yet. Let me read to you. I just want you to hear the words. Do we have any leftovers, or did they all get Okay, just for what this works, I also have the mechanism of how this all breaks down, which I got me 20 copies of. I don't know if people want it or not. It's kind of complicated. Listen, just listen. Don't even read. I'm going to read my translation where I broke down each word and tried to play the words back and forth. I want to show you why we're doing this class. I want to show you the significant difference. Me, who, as of a year ago, I still considered myself illiterate. Now I recognize the letters, maybe I'm not so illiterate. But compared to some, I'm an idiot, an illiterate idiot. The point is this. Let me read you these words. Consider what you've heard in the doctrines and the theologies that are going around. The statements about the tribulation coming, the beast, the Antichrist, the New World Order, the rapture. Remember these voices. We heard some people at the conference over the weekend talking about some things. Now, I'm not trying to preach doctrine or theology. I'm just going to tell you what these words can be interpreted as meaning. Remember, David, if he's laying on his deathbed, this is 2 Samuel 23, verses 2 to 7. And he gives these words. And then he dies. These words are Zion words. These words are cut off and separated and being distinct and unique. David, the one who was close to Yahweh's heart, and he has this baton that he hands to perhaps his son Solomon, perhaps his offspring in the future, perhaps hoping that it'll come to us. What did he tell us? What is the baton, the Zion message, the set apart, distinctive? This. Zion, hey, look at this. My last words. If I can just project this into the future, where I know my people, I know they will turn away, but if I can just launch this projectile, that's a Zion, remember, a launched projectile, to launch this projectile into the future for that generation that just might listen. Now listen to these words. The prescribed path of Yahweh's personal disposition to develop, expand, to become. That's kind of the definition of the Aleph Tav. That's the definition of what the Aleph Bet is all about. The prescribed path is the Ruach of Yahweh's disposition. That's the planet, I will. That's the Aleph. To develop, expand. That's the Memi. To become. He identifies this Zion Aleph Tav. This is Yahweh's thing. As stipulated in the Aleph Bet, home of the Aleph Tav, Dabir B, that Yod means in me, with me, through me. Dabir is the word thing. Through, in me, these things. That's what the Aleph Bet is. So here I'm jumping to some conclusions here, but these are the words that I'm translating, and I can show you the mechanism. But now I'm trying to qualify what I'm doing, but now you can just listen. Remember, these are David's words. The place from where matters are measured, weighed, the plumb line, the reference to truth, which I maintain is the Hebrew language, the Hebrew alphabet, yoked to by use of the tongue, developing, steering by language, stating the right words, take off, lift up, spread wings, fly as ordered. I will grant authority to her, my Israel, if only she, Israel, wraps up in, conforms to my image. regards me in the matters I have led her to. One rules, reigns in this kingdom allegorically. What happens next is the likeness of what is imagined and believed in thoughts. Every meticulous little detail sprouts into a flock. It's the exponential multiplication theory. Rule by speaking correct resemblances, exact, precise, righteous. It develops a siege wall, a bulwark, which is a mishkan wall, a chet of both offense and defense. Look at Aleph Tav. Revere with awe its instruction. Be attached and affectionate to it. With fear and trembling, I will strike them with chaotic turbulence. Swallow these matters greedily. According to this covenant, hailstones or gourmet delicacies, sworn to regard or cursed by oath for violation. Light has become ugly. Man is designed like light. He has become unseemly through timidity, disheartened. Seek, investigate, examine, differentiate, scrutinize, review. Go east, back to the old path, the ancestors' ways. Become a citizen, homeborn, naturalized. Serve as a virile member, industrious, exploited, used as a nimble servant. Cleave, split apart, abandon the former condition for the new day of light right now. Not thick and tangled, clouded, obscured. Embellished with an administrative mechanism, such as music, words with instruments and rhythm. Shine, revise, correct, bring forth a menagerie, alphabet, at the letters, color and light, orum and tumim. Rain showers, right in the middle of doing this. This is what we're doing. Everything sprouting, vigorous and green like springtime. Break the curse. If there were no basis of truth in my house, if there were no honest, trustworthy foundation with my family, as if nothing solid my domicile could depend on, in my house, these people are as strong as each separate piece of the hidden foundation. My reputation forever is founded on that right there. Watch, uncover, expose the delicate roots. Quench your thirst. Arrange in parallel order of rows to juxtaposition. It's like the chart out there. It's all in there, ready to open up and give forth at the proper command. Take heed for every detail of consideration. He will help me, my support, dependable. Every desire, every secret wish protected. Each little sprout a pleasure to regard, because nothing else matters. Worthless, of useless benefit, a path of thorns, abhorred and detestable, like a sickening dread, lost, banished it, all of it destroyed, completely wasted away, because no one takes hold of it. I will cause to exist. I will cause to exist. Exert toilsome, exhausting labor in them who strive, who congregate themselves to confirm and fulfill the ironclad secret which seems despicable and cheap. Open eye, wake to understanding, trained to use intellectual abilities flexibly to bring forth blessing and favor, bestowing graces of favor, and burning with fire the odious what stinks. Make it straight, plumb, level, square, smooth, even. Control the power of fire like a torch dipped in pitch. In, with, through, among, into, on Shabbat. And that was his last word. Is this the message David gave? All I did was take these words and break them down with this mechanism using the dictionary and the meanings of the letters. The last word he used was the letter bet, shin bet tav. Shin bet tav is Shabbat. The letter bet, as we said, means in, with, among, through, on. It's also contrary. But if the last thing he said was with Shabbat, control the power, I'm reading backwards, control the power of fire. There's a picture of a torch dipped in pitch. That's controlled fire. Make it straight. Figure out how to bring back that which is the right path. Yashar. Yashar El is the word Israel. Yashar is the word to make straight. And El is the power, strength. Elohim, actually, Elohi, Aleph Lamed Hey Yod, is the power to cause things to be proper. Anyway, the point is, if you break down each one of these letters and you come up with these words, this sounds like the message of David saying right here, worthless of useless benefit. The reason why we don't know how to operate in the kingdom is because no one has taken hold of these things. What are these things? This isn't my stuff. I'm just looking at what the letters mean. That's all. If you look at what the letters mean, this is the message embedded in David's last words. Now, if somebody wants to wonder how I got there, and there's plenty open to interpretation and conversation. This is hard to read, but I did make a few other copies here. This is all the chicken scratches of the notes where I broke down each word with the mechanism I just showed you, using the dictionary, using the letters, and writing them in different colors so that they could be somewhat easy to read. But again, these are my notes as I'm studying. The only reason I'm showing you this is not because this is anything so special, but it's just like, it's just notes. It's just writing down words and letters and trying to figure things out and looking them up in the dictionary and looking at this is prefix, that's a suffix, this is what these words mean, this is what those words mean, and then taking all those for each word and putting them together and trying to render them into a sentence or maybe a couple sentences. Maybe they read backwards or opposite, and then you look at this word compared to that one and that one, and then you read that one and say, well, that was in reference to that one. But you can't read them one by one in a chronological sequence and stay there. Where you go if you do that is on page 3, which is on the bottom, where it's the typical translation. But you can read this typical translation that we started off reading, and basically what it says is, if the king rules with righteousness, everybody will be happy like a spring rain with sunshine and everything grows. But if you're wicked, everybody's going to hate it, and it'll be like thorns in the path in which you can only handle those wicked men with iron tools, chop them down and burn them in their path. Well, those sound like wonderful words for David to say on his deathbed. But these other words look to me like a profound baton to project into the future for us to regard. And the reason I wrote this down is just to say, if we regard these things, there's much benefit in the regard of them, I think. And the reason I'm so zealous or passionate about this is because this is just one little phrase that I found. And I've tried to translate hundreds of words and verses, all of which have this positive story. Do you see anything in here about the tribulation? Do you see anything in here about the Antichrist? Do you see anything about the beast that we should run from or that we should hide from? Look at the Aleph Tav, revere its awe with this instruction. I will strike them with chaotic turbulence. Who? Who's he going to strike with chaotic turbulence? Not the people that regard as Aleph Tav. According to this covenant, hailstones are gourmet delicacies. We talked about that as the weeks of the Vav and the Zion. If we regard his words, we're yoked to the blessings of the covenant. We get into the Mishkan. We get everything he said he'd give us. And if we don't, we have cut ourselves off. And what we get is the backlash of the horrors of the Holocaust, the Inquisition, and the tribulation. Go back to the ancient path. He's telling us right there. And it says here, the word mamatar, meter, that's the word meter. Rain showers, right in the middle of doing this. I expect that as we are trying to seek out his words, I expect the rain showers which causes things to flourish and grow right in the middle of us seeking his words. It's not, well, one of these days it's like, Yahweh, please, according to your word, give us a blessing. Give us your rain showers. Cause us to flourish. We don't want to stand in fear to those who would intimidate us and to cause us travail and tribulation. We look to you. You are Yahweh Elohim. You are our collective, our Elohim, we have no hope but you. We can't trust in our storehouses. We cannot trust in our strength. We cannot trust in our horses. We cannot trust in our government. We cannot trust in our heritage. We trust in Yahweh alone. We look to you. You're our strength. You're our hope. You're our salvation. Yeshua T. You are my salvation. Yahweh Elohim. Bring us through the fight. We look to you to provide everything we need. Our food, our shelter, our sanity. Thank you, Yahweh, for your word.